Hi, my name is Bridget Weisbrod, and this is my presentation on the science of reading. Louisa Moats and Carol Tolman once said, "Speaking is natural, reading and writing are not." Clara Maria Ferrantini also once said, "Imagine rearranging the wiring in our brain in order to grasp the various components of reading, because that is essentially what is happening when we learn to read." Although reading may seem like a quick and simple activity for many people, it is actually an extremely complex process. Almost every aspect of one's life involves the ability to read. Reading is not just something that students in a school need to be able to do, but rather everyone in any stage of life. This is why it is so important that every person is able to receive the type of instruction they need to become fluent readers. This way, ideally, everyone can have successful careers and lives. The science of reading. It is critical to understand the science of reading because, as future educators, we need to know how to help our students learn to read fluently and confidently. The science of reading is all about how children learn to read and what affects them strongly, what does not affect them, and what even retracts from their reading skills. It contains research from education, cognitive psychology, developmental psychology, and neuroscience that influence our current knowledge on the best way to educate students in their reading abilities. It is not a program or an intervention that you can buy, but rather a set of research from different areas in order to help teachers understand the best way to instruct their students in reading. The simple view of reading consists of two tools for reading: word recognition or decoding, and language comprehension. It is a blueprint for how humans are able to see words and understand them to be capable of reading. Decoding is the ability that one has to recall words rapidly from their memory. Language comprehension includes a person's ability to understand the meaning of the words they recall. The formula fabricated by Goh and Tumner in 1986 looks like this: decoding times language comprehension equals reading comprehension. This formula indicates that a student's reading comprehension can be measured by their decoding abilities, multiplied by their language comprehension. Reading comprehension is when students understand what they are reading in text. As a result, it is if a student is unable to perform either decoding or language comprehension, then they will not have the skill of reading comprehension. As a result, it is imperative that teachers include both decoding and language comprehension in their lesson plans. As you can see in the top left corner, we have word recognition times language comprehension equals reading comprehension. This is the formula for reading comprehension created by Goh and Tumner in 1986. In the bottom left corner, it shows a student with some word decoding needs as well as some needs in language comprehension. So this just shows a student that has difficulty with word recognition and some difficulty with language comprehension, which shows that they have very poor reading comprehension, but they still have some reading comprehension. Whereas in the top right corner, if a student has 0 word recognition times complete strong language comprehension, then they will still have 0 reading comprehension because the two, word recognition and language comprehension, are multiplied. So if they have no word recognition, they won't be able to have reading comprehension. Or vice versa. If they have no language comprehension and complete word recognition, then they still will not be able to have reading comprehension. So this is just a good example of what it would look like if a child had either accuracy and fluency or proper understanding of a sentence, or both. So on the top left, we have complete word recognition. They know the sounds of the letters that they're reading. They recognize the letters, but they do not understand the meaning associated with these letters and words. Then right underneath, we have no understanding of what sounds the letters represent, but they recognize the words. But they recognize the words, but not the overall meaning of the sentence. And then on the bottom, we have complete understanding of what the words, what letters are in the words and what words they make, and then a full understanding of what the meaning of the words in the sentence are, so they can grasp the full meaning of the sentence. In the 1990s, Hollis Scarborough constructed the reading rope. Scarborough's reading rope is formed from two main strands: language comprehension and word recognition. However, the rope is more complex than this because each of these main strands consists of smaller strands. Language comprehension is formed from background knowledge, vocabulary, language structure, verbal reasoning, and literacy/print knowledge, while print word recognition consists of phonological awareness, decoding, and sight recognition. It is crucial for educators to learn the components of Scarborough's reading rope in order to create effective instruction for their students. In order to really understand the strands of the reading rope, each part needs to be broken down and defined. First, consider the language comprehension strand. Remember that language comprehension means that a student understands the meanings of written words in a text. The first piece of this strand is background knowledge, which has to do with what a student knows from their past experiences that help them to understand the essence of the word that they are reading. Teachers can build a student's background knowledge by teaching her students about the topic that they will be reading about, specifically context. Vocabulary is the next component that builds language comprehension by providing students with a larger pool of spoken words that they know the meaning of. Language structure deals with syntax and semantics. Syntax is how the words are physically placed together, and semantics is the meaning that the words convey in that order. Next is verbal reasoning, which has to do with understanding of the literal or figurative meaning of a sentence. This skill can be developed in students by teaching them how to read tone of voice, body language, and the context of the situation in which the sentence has been spoken. The last thread in the learning comprehension strand is literacy knowledge. Literacy knowledge is a skill that students learn from exposure to multiple types of writings, including novels, informational books, poetry, etc. This exposure gives students the tools they need to persevere through reading whatever type of literacy they encounter. Again, within the word recognition strand of the reading rope, there are phonological awareness, decoding, and sight recognition threads. Each thread is necessary to complete print word recognition skills. Phonological awareness is knowledge that there exists words, syllables, onsets, and rhymes, and how one letter alteration in a word changes the meaning of that word. In a similar way, phonics has to do with how each letter makes a sound on its own, but together those sounds make a word which has meaning. During phonics instruction, students learn how spoken language can be written in print and how printed words can be read like spoken language. Decoding is the ability that one has to recognize words by their memory of the letter sounds in the word. This does not necessarily mean that the person understands the meaning of the word that they are reading. Lastly, sight recognition means that one is able to recognize frequently used words on sight. This video by Calgary Reads just explains Scarborough's reading rope in a very clear way. It's a good resource if you want to learn more about the reading rope. Another way to look at the brain and how one processes letters and words in order to read is by looking at the four-part processing model for word recognition. This model was created by Motes and Tolman. There are four processors within the brain that assist in one's ability to read: phonological, orthographic, meaning, and context. The model also provides evidence that instruction should occur for students to address all processors so that as each processor is strengthened, all processors will work together. The phonological processor recognizes phonemes and helps one to understand how they work together to form words. This processor is connected to phonemic awareness. The orthographic processor helps one understand written language by distinguishing letters and words in print format. The meaning processor makes connections between words and their meanings. It uses organizational methods including spelling patterns, categories and concepts, word relationships, word meanings, and associated meanings, and meaningful parts of words, morphemes, and roots. The context processor assists the meaning processor by looking at the connections between all of the words in a sentence in order to identify each word's specific meaning as it is used in a specific sentence. All four processors are necessary for reading because they work together to help one detect letters, recognize how they work together to form words, and decipher word meaning in order to understand a sentence. The four processors are connected in a very specific order to fluently process letters and words. The process begins at the phonological and orthographic processors, which combine efforts to allow one's brain to decode words. After this is achieved, the meaning processor is able to contribute with comprehension through known vocabulary. Lastly, the context processor helps one to understand the meanings of the words that one is not able to immediately recognize through the meaning processor. If any of these processors do not complete their role in the entire process of reading comprehension, then the process will not be able to be completed and comprehension will not be achieved. This video is by Dr. Tolman. She just explains this figure of the four processors in a very clear way. It's a great resource if you want to learn more about the four processors. What happens to the brain when one sees letters and words? To answer this question, many things are happening to the brain as one reads, and they are almost all happening simultaneously. Because of functional magnetic resonance imaging, scientists have been able to recognize the different parts of the brain that are activated in human beings as they read. There are 4 areas of the brain that it can be divided into. These areas are frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital regions of the brain, and they all play a different part in humanity's ability to read. The parietal temporal region is where the brain is able to recognize a written word and break it down into the different sounds of each letter in the word. The occipital temporal region is the part of the brain that connects words to actual meaning. Lastly, the frontal region of the brain is where humans are able to form words in speech. Because all of these areas of the brain work together simultaneously over time, human beings have developed the ability to read fluently. So this is just a quick video on an overview of how the different parts of the brain work together to help a human being read. A disfluent reader's brain does not work like the brain of a fluent reader. For example, a disfluent reader with dyslexia may have a brain that cannot make the connection necessary in the parietal temporal region. As a result, this person would have difficulty recognizing the specific sounds in a word, making it difficult for them to recognize the word that they are trying to read. In addition, there would also be less activity in the occipital temporal region of the disfluent brain of someone with dyslexia than the fluent brain of someone with no disabilities. Consequently, the person with dyslexia would have trouble understanding the meaning of the words that they are reading. If the connections in the areas of the brain involved in reading are not adequately made, then a person would not be able to be a fluent reader. It is important to catch the symptoms of dyslexia as soon as possible in order to provide intervention when children are learning foundational skills of reading. The first signs of dyslexia cannot be seen until a child is in first grade or 6 years old. Around the 4th grade, reading instruction begins to change from decoding and phonics, moving on to more understanding and comprehending the meaning of the text. This can be very difficult for students to transition to if they have a disfluent brain because they will be stuck on how to decode the words that they are reading, making it almost impossible for them to think about the meaning of the text. Immediately intervening when a student shows signs of dyslexia is important because dyslexia can cause students to fall behind in reading skills, have a negative self-image, and become frustrated when attempting to read. This video is all about how dyslexia affects the brain and makes it very difficult for readers to become fluent. In order to teach students to read fluently, it is important to practice explicit instruction in the classroom. Explicit instruction is clear and concise for students. There is a specific goal that is to be met through the instruction. The feedback is provided to students so that they may continue to grow and know which direction to take to do so. When teaching a lesson with explicit instruction, a teacher should begin with a review of background knowledge needed for the lesson. The goals of the lesson will be stated clearly, and new information presented in the lesson should be delivered to the students slowly in small increments. This makes the information more digestible. The teacher should model practice activities and give the students multiple opportunities to practice with the new information that they have been given before moving on. During the lesson, the teacher should also be assessing the students to ensure that they are understanding the new material. Specific strategies that a teacher should adopt when using explicit instruction include I do, we do, you do, phonics instruction, guided practice, and modeling. Explicit instruction is especially useful when teaching students whose brains work differently by explaining to students only the main points so that they may focus on what is most important and not lose sight of the goal of the lesson or activity that they are engaging in. This video is the I do, we do, you do strategy. It explains with the metaphor of a mama bird teaching her baby birds how to fly. It's a great, quick resource that makes it very easy to comprehend. This video is about explicit phonics instruction in the classroom. And lastly, this video just shows a teacher using modeling and guided practice with sounding out letters and words in her classroom. What would explicit instruction look like in a 4th grade classroom? First, it is important to review background knowledge for the students. To do this effectively, the teacher should cover phonemic awareness skills. Activities should include rhyming, blending sounds, and segmenting words into phonemes. Phonemic awareness should not just be covered once, but should be reviewed and included in instruction regularly. This will ensure that the students have the foundational skills that they need to move on to the next step of becoming fluent readers. Next, it is imperative to focus on word decoding and fluency. Phonics instruction, modeling reading for students, and allowing time specifically for independent reading are 3 very important methods of instruction to include in the classroom when focusing on these 2 pillars of literacy. Adding new words that students are not familiar with within these instructional activities is important at this age of their learning because it promotes growth in their ability to decode any word they see and therefore their overall reading fluency. Adding new vocabulary is the next step towards successful reading instruction. Students need to learn the measure of the new words that they are decoding. The vocabulary words at this level should be Tier 2 words. A teacher can expose her students to new vocabulary through literature and have her students practice using the words through different activities to learn their meaning. Some of these activities include discussing words in context, using word walls and other visual aids, and word work exercises. Lastly, it is at this stage where reading comprehension becomes a focus. To begin, give students prompts to promote their critical thinking abilities about what they are reading. These prompts will inspire students to make connections and draw inferences from the text. Graphic organizers are a great method of instruction when teaching comprehension because it helps to organize thoughts in a clear and concise way. This will help students to think about what is the most important aspects of the story. This video is all about different explicit learning strategies in the classroom for explicit instruction. It's a very useful source for teachers to watch in order to be able to apply explicit instruction correctly in their classroom. The goal of the science of reading is to promote reading fluency for all students. It gives teachers the tools they need to help their students succeed in the classroom and in life, through providing knowledge of how the brain learns to read and evidence-based strategies to support this learning. The simple view of reading simplifies and clarifies the basic skills that students need to achieve reading comprehension. Scarborough's rope expands on the simple view of reading by providing teachers with more detailed knowledge of the abilities within the two main categories of the simple view of reading that a student needs to become a fluent reader. Because of this, teachers know what goals they should set in their lesson plans. The science of reading has also made clear through evidence-based research that there is a very specific way that a lesson should be carried out in order to prompt reading comprehension. This specific method of instruction is called explicit instruction, which includes specific strategies like I do, we do, you do, guided practice, and phonics instruction. With all of the knowledge that the science of reading has provided, teachers have the tools they need to form students into fluent and comprehensive readers. And just here are my resources. And that is my presentation on the science of reading. Thank you for listening.